everybody. Welcome to another exciting, fun-filled, expeditious episode of Radiorama, where, as the name implies, I show you how to work on radios. And today we have a Packard Bell. Let's see if I have a model number anywhere. Model number 5R3. Kind of a generic 5-tube radio. 50C5 for the output, 35W4 rectifier. Got a 12AV6 triode, and then the two IF related tubes, 12BE6 and A6. This is a little fancier compared to some of the other ones I've seen. It's got a pilot light up here, and it's got a handle. Don't know if it works. Interestingly enough, this is the third one of these I've worked on this week. They had a whole flurry of these guys come in, and I was like, I don't want to make an episode about every single one of these because it's boring. So that one's already done, but you don't have to watch that. So I decided to film this one because it's a little more interesting because of the color, the handle, and the nice little pilot light. So let's see if it works. And by the way, I don't recommend what I'm about to do if you have a set that has power transformer. That doesn't do anything. Okay, that is the on-off switch. This must be tone. And it's got like a vernier tuning here, so that's the tuner. The other one's just like a generic knob, you twist back and forth. So again, this one's a little bit more fancy. And so far, there's no sound. Okay, that.
For the Black Information Network.
Maybe that's volume.
Source for Black News.
Yep.
Black Information.
That's what that is.
Threes all season. What are they doing to eliminate which has been
Now,
Dallas'
granted,
most effective?
the controls are pretty dirty, but it works. It's always nice when something works. First of all, I'm going to do this in reverse because I've already done an entire Packard Bell this evening earlier, including the electronics. I don't feel like doing that. It's getting a little bit late. The reason we're doing so many is because we have an auction coming up like in about 6 weeks. We have 100 radios that need to be totaled up by then, so we're just frantically restoring these things. So I'm going to do the case first because I already have dirtied up my buffing tool. I've got the plastic compound out, so I just take the guts out, which is easy. You take the knobs off, and there's 2 screws in the bottom. The whole thing comes out in one piece. Be careful about this. This is pretty brittle, and it'd be very easy to punch it out, so just be gentle with it. This is a not super sturdy plastic. A lot of times these are cracked. They had just not quite figured out high impact plastics in the 50s by this point, or if they did, they weighed a ton. So this is a compromise. Plus it's probably cheaper because you have colored plastic versus Bakelite, which you have to paint. Okay, so what I'm going to do again is use my handy dandy mechanical buffer and Novus number 2 plastic polish. I'm going to stay away from this complicated grill because then you'll get polished down in there and that's no fun. This is already not in bad shape, but we're just going to buff it out so it shines like a mirror. I think I'm going to leave the handle on there because I've looked and it's held on with friction clips, and getting those back on there is going to be well, getting them off is a bitch, but I'd rather not deal with that, so I'll just buff around it. Wow, what a difference that makes. You can see how nice and perfect that is as far as the sheen goes, and it also removed some of the discolorations. It's one of those colors from the 50s that makes you just want to eat it. It looks like, I don't know, French vanilla ice cream. I guess I'm also pretty hungry. It's time for me to go inside and make dinner. Anyway, that's all I'm going to do today. I've already restored one of these, as I mentioned, so I'm a little radioed out. I can feel I can get one radio done in the evening, then I'm like, okay, I'm done. But today I got 1.5, I guess. So we'll resume on this tomorrow. Yeah, welcome to day 2, working on the Yeller Packard Bell. And last night I worked on the case. I'm going to see if I can get that blemish off of there, because otherwise plastic's just about perfect. So now it's time to work on the electronics, which is about as basic and as simple as they come. Not much to write home about here. We have a 2-value electrolytic, which has, according to this, a 40 and a 20 microfarad electrolytic capacitor and 150 volts. It's probably got a black lead. Yeah, here's a black lead is coming here and goes there for our common ground. What I did for the last one of these is I just tied both of the grounds of the new electrolytics here and hung them off here. And I believe I used the existing leads from the old electrolytics tied to the positives. These ceramic bodied caps, they're just paper caps. They shouldn't be trusted. The most important one in here is this one. This is the 2 chassis cap, meaning this is not a true hot chassis. It is a floating chassis, which makes it a little bit safer. But this is the wrong type of capacitor and the wrong value. It says 0.15 microfarads. That means you'd get a little bit of a jolt if you were to touch that and ground at the same time. So we're going to replace that with a X2 Y2 across the line cap rated at 0.01 microfarads. And then we have 2 more of these caps. They're rated at 0.047 microfarads, 200 volts. I replace everything with 630 volt rated capacitors. These are ceramic disc capacitors. You don't need to screw around with them. They're fine unless they're physically broken. Not much to replace. If I count everything up, there's 5 parts that need to be replaced. That's why I kind of hate these things. They're so basic and simple. They're not amazing performers. They're just mediocre and average at best. It's fine if you live in a major city like I do. If you're out in the sticks, you might need to run a little bit of an extension antenna, which is why they have this guy here for that purpose. And I don't like that they started to skimp on things like this flimsy cardboard back. The older ones have a thicker cardboard back. So as a result, I don't want to ruin this because it's got the antenna attached. I'm going to detach it, and I tend to mark the wires. One of the antenna wires goes here. The other one attaches itself to I believe the tuning condenser here. So I just mark with permanent marker, red and black or whatever, so I know which one goes where. Desolder it, and then we can proceed with the rebuild. Alright, so here we have the 2 electrolytics replaced. I used the existing cables. I just tied both of the negatives together to get to that common ground. Just need to replace these 2 caps here. This is the oh so important 2 chassis cap. I'm going to replace it with this guy, and that will split open if it gets struck by lightning versus fusing together. Plus it's a much lower value. It's going to remove almost all of the potential shock hazard. Alright, so again, there wasn't much to replace, but we have the chassis cap, and then we have this other paper cap replaced. Everything else is done. Now, next thing I'm going to do is clean the volume and tone control, and you do that by squirting some cleaner. Open this little space here. And yes, I'm using WD-40. We have like these active discussions and debates about WD-40 a lot on the radio forum, and some people swear by it and some people think it's the work of the devil, but I'm neutral. I know that deoxit's probably a little bit better, but man, deoxit's super expensive. It's like $17, $18 a can, and it's like a little can too, so I'd go through a lot. So I just use WD-40. It works for me. I use it on my electronics, so full disclaimer. Now that I've recapped it, I want to make sure it actually still works, because I swear some of the biggest fumbles I've ever had are on radios that are, oh, it's simple, it's a cake, I'll get this done like in 5 minutes, and then it turns out to be a real problem. So let's make sure that we're still firing on all cylinders. Okay, so we're test firing it. I can't remember which one of these is volume, so I'll turn them both down. I'm going to blast my ears off. Alright. There it goes. I don't know if I have a good connection here. Whoa, shit. Alright, that indicates that we probably have a short in the rectifier tube. What is this, 35 WD-4? Didn't mean to curse, but when I see a pilot light do that, when it gets super bright, that means your rectifier tube is on its way out. The other possibility is that I wasn't paying attention. I wired one of the electrolytic capacitors in backwards, which I don't see how. Let me make sure. They're wired in correctly, so that's not the problem. But I am going to test that rectifier. I am curious. Sometimes your tube tester will not detect a gassy rectifier. At least mine won't. And I have a TO7, not a TO7. I should remember this since I've had this thing for years. TV7 tube tester. So let's yank that tube tester up here and let's test that tube, see if it's shorted. Okay, well that tube did not test either bad or shorted. So I just stuck another 35W4 in there, and now it's not causing the pilot light to short. Likewise, we're picking up, radio.
So small cap. Not deliver. Into America. Partnership. What is strategy?
All right. This is vernier tuning, and you can see it's just all turning together just about, so it's kind of sticky. So I'm going to heat that up and put a little oil in it, and then it'll turn nicer. Okay, now, first of all, I had to clean this up. Why? I don't know. I just felt like doing it. So you want to get a little oil on all the bearing surfaces. I'm going to especially get this, get it pretty wet. Because then what I do is I get at my soldering iron, get the solder wiped off of it, and then we want to heat this up, ideally close to the bearing. And what it's going to do is heat up the old gunk that's inside, and the new oil via capillary action will go in, and this is going to make it tune a little bit nicer and less stiff. Push stop. All right, so now I know you probably can't tell it by the video. It's like one of those cooking shows where you're like, ooh, it tastes so good. It's like, how do you know? We're watching on TV. Anyways, this this turns a lot easier. When you put the knob on there, it's going to be even nicer. So now that we've got this cleaned up, by the way, there's a little hole in the speaker up here, and I patched it with some flexible glue. We're going to add the oh so famous and oh so controversial audio input feature. And I know exactly how to do it because, again, I've worked on this model 3 times this week. And the line that goes to the IF signal is this green wire, because this is your volume control, this is your tone control. And if we're going to add the audio input, we need to be able to temporarily disable the radio signal. And we're going to do it by putting a switch between here and there. I'll run a little wire out the back that'll go to a little toggle switch. And then the audio coming from your audio source will go through an isolation transformer. I've showed this many times on different videos. This time I'm going to show just the after installation bit, and then I'll explain it. Every other video you watch of mine, you can see in detail how I do it. I just didn't feel like doing it today, so kill me. But what I'll need to do is drill a hole back here to run my audio cable through, and it's got to be big enough to put a rubber grommet through, because you don't want sharp metal edges against a thin little audio cord. Otherwise you'll ruin the audio signal and possibly get a little bit of a electrical current through your audio device. You want to make sure it doesn't get cut. So let me put that together, and then I'll show you the results of that outcome.
We'll save our fares. I've a cozy little flat in what is known as Old Manhattan. We'll settle down right here in town. We'll have Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island.
All right.
It's lovely.
Yeah, this is a pretty color. And I love this little lighting effect here. At night that must look really cool. Plus I'm guessing that it must, maybe it goes through some of the plastic a little bit because it's semi-transparent. Well, it's not transparent, but it's... Anyway, that concludes the end of this episode. I know this was kind of a simple, quick episode, but it was a simple radio, so it makes sense. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. Until next time something comes across my workbench, I'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.